Tonight, this country goes into 2020 as divided as it's ever been. From Frontline's award-winning political team, part 2 of a special series. Years of reporting, investigating the conflicts and crossing the divide.
People were angry.
Cascade of outrage.
Outrage machine.
Are they going to start storming the gates?
The epic story of how we got here continues. Donald Trump inherits a deeply divided country.
Trump didn't create this, but he leaned into it, and everything he has done has deepened this trench.
We didn't win an election to bring the country together.
You are fake news.
It's time to take on the elites, hit them with a blowtorch.
Blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it.
It's probably the first time where the country realizes this is going to get bad.
Very bitterly divided America on this.
America's Great Divide.
It's only going to get nastier.
The dramatic conclusion, tonight on Frontline.
Tonight's program contains mature content which may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
For some people, the ultimate goal in life has been becoming the President of the United States. Would you like to be the President of the United States?
I really don't believe I would, Rona, but I would like to see somebody as the President who could do the job.
Why wouldn't someone like yourself run for political office? You have all the money that you possibly need. You've accomplished a great deal, even though you are only 34. Why wouldn't you dedicate yourself to public service?
Because I think it's a very mean life. I would love and I would dedicate my life to this country, but I see it as being a mean life, and I also see it as somebody with strong views and somebody with the kind of views that are maybe a little bit unpopular, which may be right, but may be unpopular. Wouldn't necessarily have a chance of getting elected against somebody with no great brain but a big smile. And that's a sad commentary for the political process.
Over the decades, as Donald Trump watched and waited, the prospect of becoming president would grow, just as the nation was becoming more and more divided.
It is time to heal America.
Bill Clinton ran against brain-dead politics in both parties.
And a leader must be a uniter, not a divider.
George W. Bush said he was a uniter, not a divider.
We are and always will be the United States of America.
Barack Obama was introduced to the country saying there's not a blue America and a red America. And each of them, by the end of their presidency, the country was more divided than when they took office.
It was in that division that Trump saw his moment.
He was looking for an opportunity, and his opportunity was division. His opportunity was mining resentment and weaponized race, and that's what he did.
This is a classic case of the time being right for a Trump candidacy. Now you have a level of dissatisfaction with the voters that we've never seen before, and they want somebody with the toughness and the independence, and nobody can bully him. He's viewed by voters as his own man, who will tell it like it is, whether it's politically correct or not.
I am your voice.
An age of unprecedented anger, resentment, political conflict, polarization had arrived. And with it, Donald Trump.
Crazed lunatics, the Democrats.
Ready and willing to stoke America's great divide.
The biggest event to date in campaign 2016.
Top 10 candidates taking the stage for a primetime showdown.
Businessman Donald Trump.
I had my research assistant research all the candidates who were going to be on stage that night.
It is 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and the moment of truth has arrived.
And pull anything interesting or controversial about them, right? Everybody had a binder like this, and Trump had a binder like this, right?
At the time, Megyn Kelly was a star on Fox News.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
Only Rosie
several...
O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't.
He knew I was going to hit him on something, and he guessed it would be women, and he got some line worked up.
Your Twitter account?
Fine, we forged forward. The convention center was laughing, but I was going to get through the rest of my question.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president?
What I say is what I say. And honestly, Megyn, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that.
The way Trump sees media, the way he sees life, is all they like me or they don't like me. And in that moment, I got moved from the she likes me category into the she doesn't like me. And I believe that night the anger was real. His anger at me was real that night.
Thank you all very much. And that will do it for the first Republican primary debate night of the 2016 presidential race. Our thanks to the candidates.
In his clash with Kelly, Trump was creating conflict, just as he'd done as a reality TV star. And afterwards, in Spin Alley, he would use the press to keep it going.
Donald Trump shows up as if he needed this hit of adrenaline before he went home to New York.
You guys okay?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Don't hurt yourselves.
It was like mosquitoes to a lantern on a summer night. I mean, the entire National Press Corps descended.
People were being trampled and camera equipment was flying all over the place, and I'd never seen a scene like this. I mean, I've seen many media stampedes, but nothing like that.
What's your history with Megyn?
I think Megyn behaved very badly, personally.
The question about women, you didn't like that?
No, I thought it was an unfair question. They didn't ask those questions of anybody else, and I thought it was an unfair question. But you know what? The answer.
It was just the beginning.
Are you going to call Roger Ailes about it?
At 3:40 in the morning, he lit up Twitter.
Wow, Megyn Kelly really bombed tonight. People are going wild on Twitter. Funny to watch.
On the phone with CNN, he went farther.
What is it with you and Megyn Kelly?
She starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions, and, you know, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever, but...
Trump recognized that it was a good storyline, and he kept fuel going under that fire because he knew some portion of his audience loved to see him challenging, you know, a powerful woman, never mind a woman at Fox. And so he accurately deduced that this would drive his numbers up with some segment of his base.
Trump had a powerful ally in the attack on Kelly, the right-wing website Breitbart, and its leader, Steve Bannon.
Fox has chosen a side. It's so evident in that debate that they're there to kneecap Donald Trump, okay? They're there to take him out. And that's when we go, okay, we run 20 stories on Megyn Kelly. I get Tony Lee and Matt Boyle, my two hammers. They go right after Megyn Kelly. We're gonna Linsky her, right? We're gonna call her out from the herd and just hit her nonstop. That's when all war broke out. That's when Breitbart, that's when you had to choose sides.
In taking on Fox, Bannon and Trump were inciting the kind of conflict Breitbart's readers thrived on.
She is a low-life. Everyone stop watching.
We need to chop her off at the knees.
We look at the comments section, these things were getting 10 and 15,000, 20,000 comments.
Megyn's the type for a quickie in the men's room.
The whole Trump, all the Pepes, all these Trump guys were pounding in here.
Kelly needs to be put in her place, fast and hard.
It was scary at times. And Breitbart kept lighting the fire over and over. And, you know, I had and have 3 young kids, really young kids, and the security threats were escalating. And we were doing everything in our power to convey to them that they needed to stop. It was one debate question, just one debate question. And he handled it fine, he did. So get off of it. And they couldn't have cared less.
Roger Ailes ran Fox News. Ruthless and powerful, Ailes was a force to be reckoned with.
Ailes calls me up and says, you got to knock off these stories. She's crying, she's all upset, she's getting death threats. I go, it sounds like a personal problem. I said, we're not backing off. We're gonna put more stories up tomorrow.
If Kelly can't take the heat, go back to the kitchen. Trump should commission a statue of Ms. Kelly on her knees and place it in front of Trump Tower.
Under the onslaught, Ailes eventually backed down. He needed Breitbart, Bannon, and Trump more than he needed Kelly.
Roger definitely felt that he had to keep that sort of Breitbart wing of the viewership on board, that they were at risk thanks to Trump's attacks on me and Fox in the wake of that debate. And he definitely wasn't going to lose 30% of the viewers as this man who by August of 2015 we knew was the likely Republican nominee. He didn't want that guy to be driving a division between Roger and the viewers.
Trump had won, and it was a sign of what was to come. Brutal, divisive, anything goes.
What Republican voters were looking for was strength. And in that moment, here's what voters saw. They saw a generation of Republican politicians who kowtowed to Fox News, who genuflected. Then they saw somebody take on Fox News, and Trump won. He broke Fox News. In the steel cage death match of Republican politics, in that instant, Donald Trump became king.
But across the political divide,
for comedians, Donald Trump has been the gift that keeps giving, but for everyone else, he's the gift that keeps on giving women the creeps.
From the coastal entertainment capitals,
I know everyone's all up in arms about the comments I made about Megyn Kelly. I was not referring to hormones or menstruation, period.
a kind of resistance by ridicule.
Come on, Trump, if you're going to say something offensive, just come out and say it.
Trump as a punchline.
Trump insults more women by 6 a.m. than most people do all night. But the reason that he doesn't like her... Donald Trump is back on the road campaigning, and so far Trump's political
As Donald Trump embarked on his presidential campaign, he doubled down on what his opponents found offensive. He exploited simmering divisions to fuel his political rise.
Trump has told me that he believes the country was already divided, that if he is just confrontational and a fighter, that people who feel aggrieved in the country will rally to him. It's an entirely unconventional approach to the presidency, to rally your own base and to not really try to unite the country.
And in arena after arena, Trump cultivated his growing populist base.
He loves the energy and he loves the adoration that he gets from those rallies. It's a critical tool for him, these rallies, to keep that connection.
He called them the forgotten.
The iconic forgotten man or the forgotten man and woman is somebody that's been left out of the system. There's a rejection of elitists and a rejection of intellectuals, and certainly a disdain for the media because those people feel that they're being looked down upon.
Trump sensed what the crowds wanted.
We're going to have such a strong military that nobody is going to mess with us. Nobody.
Anger.
We are led by very stupid people.
Confrontation.
We can't beat ISIS. Give me a break.
He loves to rouse passion and emotions. It's the thing he's best at. It's the thing he cares most about, is sort of provoking emotion. And all the fire he was getting from the crowds was about immigration.
It's going to drive the cars over the illegals. Build a wall. Build a wall.
It spoke to real worries and frustrations that had been coaxed and had caramelized over the course of a decade across America, where white Americans were truly convinced they were losing their country. And the only opportunity they had to stop it was to elect this man who says he was going to do something about it.
We are going to start winning big league.
Trump sounded like them. There was an authenticity to him that I think they connected with. He would drop an F-bomb. He said the P word on the air about Ted Cruz one time. I was in Iowa like, oh my God, what did he just say? That rhymes with wussy. I mean, this happened, right? And I think there's a swath of the American public that, look, it's not like they love vulgarity, but they just loved what they felt was his authenticity and his willingness to throw a punch, which they felt was on their behalf.
He spoke directly to their resentment. At Washington, at the elites, us versus them.
He saw what that forgotten man and woman was going through in the United States right now. I'm the avatar of your anger. If you elect me, I'll literally be an orange wrecking ball at the barricade known as the swamp, and I'll knock that barricade down for you.
But I want the cameras to span the room. Go ahead, fellas, watch. They don't turn them. They don't turn them. They don't turn them. Go ahead, turn them. Look, turn the camera. Go ahead. Turn the camera, ma'am. Turn the camera. You with the blonde hair, turn the camera. Show the room. Go ahead. They don't turn them. What about, hey, you in the center, why don't you turn your camera? Show them how many people come to these rallies. Turn them. Go ahead, turn them. Go ahead.
Cable news was so fascinated with Donald Trump that they were putting him on the air almost every day. Every one of his rallies made great television, and the news media jumped on that and gave him a lot of airtime.
And you know, look at all those live television feeds. It's always tough. Every time I speak, they put me on live television, so I have to make different speeches. These guys go around, they make the same speech hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Nobody cares. It's true.
He was looking out at the camera bank, and he could see the red light on the camera, and that meant that he was live on CNN.
You got CNN Live, you got them all.
Or Fox or one of the other networks, and he said that what he tried to do in those rallies was say whatever it took to keep the red light on.
Now, if you like the media, give them a big hand, and if you don't, give them a big boo. I had a feeling.
Donald Trump running for president is a plane that crashes every day. There is news as long as he's talking. There's news even if he isn't talking, because who knows what he might say.
Once again, we're still awaiting Donald Trump's arrival at the South Carolina rally. Gaffney.
And so you have things like CNN just showing the empty podium where he's ready to get on stage.
The breaking news, we are awaiting Donald Trump. He will speak live any moment.
That empty podium is now news.
Stand by, you're going to hear Donald Trump live.
Because it tells you, if you wait long enough, something crazy might happen again.
We're awaiting Donald Trump to take the stage. This is out of Tampa, Florida.
Breaking news, Donald Trump about to rally thousands of supporters.
Live pictures that we're bringing to you. This is of a Donald Trump rally about to get underway in Tampa.
All right, we're awaiting the arrival of Donald Trump at a rally in Virginia Beach. These are live pictures right now as the crowd.
And as the months wore on, Trump's message caught fire with a more sinister crowd.
The anger only increased as it got farther along. It became completely acceptable. It became okay to come to a Trump rally and wear a shirt that says Hillary Clinton is a C.T.
The campaign is continually dogged by a small and vocal number of white supremacists, Klansmen, neo-Nazis.
Roger Stone was a longtime political advisor to Donald Trump. He has since been convicted of lying to Congress.
This isn't a very large group of people, but they're very vocal. And they attach themselves to Trump
Trump, whenever there was a moment to draw a line between himself and these extreme parts of the voting bloc, he refused. I think without question, the only way you can interpret that is that he was going to use these groups to try to build this coalition.
As anti-Trump protesters showed up at his rallies,
There's a guy totally disruptive, throwing punches.
Trump had no boundaries.
The old days. You know what they used to do to guys like that when they were in a place like this? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks. Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. That's true.
You start seeing these really ugly moments, the rallies, with protesters, some of whom are non-white protesters, getting treated very violently by his supporters. Trump himself seeming to incite his supporters to go after protesters.
Knock the crap out of him. Would you just knock the hell? I promise you, I will pay for the legal fees. I promise. I promise.
Trump was pouring fuel on the flames of division. His brand of politics and American anger were becoming one and the same.
He did not create this moment. He did not create the ugliness. He did not create the Twitter, social media universe. He did not create the xenophobia, the nationalism, the backlash against globalism and global crusades. He did not create entertainment politics, politics as a form of reality show television. He created none of this. He is its pure manifestation. The absolute logical endpoint of a bunch of trends in American life. I think he is its beneficiary, 100%.
New poll has 87% of Republicans supporting Trump. The other 13% are currently standing on bridges looking vacantly into the distance.
Critics say the poll is unscientific. Because even science can't explain how Donald Trump is still in the lead.
Six Flags on stage. He's like a president and an amusement park all rolled up into one.
Donald Trump wasn't the only one who seized the opportunity to exploit the nation's division. Vladimir Putin did it too, using a cyber attack to strike at the fault lines of American democracy.
The effectiveness of this interference from Russia depends on a couple things. It depends on the polarization of politics in America. There were divides, and Russia was pushing out material that exploited those divides, that broadened them, that called attention to those divides.
Posts on Black Power,
staying woke, uplifting
we
our
are proud to be black and stand
on Southern Pride.
The Confederate flag represents heritage.
Join our fight to save Southern.
Russian attacks played into deep-seated fears.
If I win, Clinton wins.
Exploiting both sides on the most divisive issues.
Stop police brutality.
Blue lives matter.
Immigration.
It's time to get rid of parasites.
Guns.
I'll keep my guns free to
race.
White kids chant N-word in school bus.
And that's when I realized, uh-oh, things have gone too far. There was a tipping point that took place, and I think the Russians didn't create that tipping point, but they exploited it. They saw the fissures of division. They saw these pivot points, and they went right for them.
Trump, himself sowing discord and chaos, encouraged the Russians to continue their attack and target Hillary Clinton and the Democrats.
I will tell you this. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
I think they started their operation to intervene in the election with the idea of simply sowing discord and weakening the United States as a country by doing so. It only later became a mission to actually specifically elect Donald Trump.
To help Trump, the Russians spread fake news about Hillary Clinton.
Vladimir Putin certainly has our number as a country. He understood how easily Americans could be turned against each other with Facebook. What Facebook does is obliterate the ability to tell the lie from truth, where what is real, what is fake, is not discernible and not knowable. And the consequences of that for a democratic republic are frightening at best to think about.
Record that Mrs.
One particular conspiracy theory was aired in America by a Russian propaganda network, RT.
Theories about her health caught on.
Exaggerated and questionable stories about Clinton's health.
Under a microscope are Clinton's falls, cuffs, and head motions.
And how did you talk about Senator Warren? Did you talk about vice presidential possibilities with Senator Warren?
You guys have got to try the cold chocolate. This video, filmed in June, went viral and started a slew of rumors that Clinton may have had a seizure.
We were watching stories about Hillary Clinton appearing on Russian propaganda websites like Russia Today and Sputnik.
A Democratic frontrunner has been forced to refute rumors of her deteriorating health, maybe.
And then somehow ending up in very similar form in the right-wing media ecosystem of the United States. Breitbart and InfoWars, even Fox News.
What was once a concern voiced in whispers is now getting mainstream attention. We're talking about Hillary Clinton's health.
Some have said it's like a mini seizure. What does it look like to you?
Could be a post-concussion syndrome. You know, your balance is off, you're dizzy all the time, your memory is
It was invented, overblown, but it didn't matter.
The fact is, she's out there giving speeches every day and has to cancel them, having these coughing fits.
New questions tonight about Hillary Clinton.
Good evening. It was a dramatic moment that's already being watched and rewatched.
The episode this morning is raising more questions about her health.
Она чувствует сонливость, страдает от сильных
А также проблемы с щитовидной железой и отклонения от нормы.
And the candidate made the most of it.
And she can't make it 15 feet to her car. Give me a break. Give me a break. Give me a break!
As the fake news spread, conservative talk radio host Charlie Sykes saw how it hardened the divide.
I'll tell you what my experience was in 2016, that the flood of these misleading or outright false stories was increasing. In the past, I'd always been able to push back on my audience and say, okay, you understand this is not true, this is not the case, you know, there are not bodies stacked up in the Clinton library, and here's the source of all of that. By late 2016, though, I was no longer able to do that. People were not willing to accept the corrections. And Donald Trump is counting on this, and this does fundamentally change our politics.
Not sure why Trump would openly ask Russia to spy on Americans, but I'm sure he has his treasons.
Donald Trump is asking Russia to hack our former Secretary of State.
A man running for president just asked Russia to hack America.
Donald, your party wants you to appeal to the red states, not the red state.
Using conflict and outrage, Donald Trump had galvanized an angry base and won over the reluctant Republican establishment. But a tabloid crisis would test how much they would take and how far he could go.
That day, we're up in the 25th floor conference room, and it's Friday afternoon, about 2 o'clock, and all of a sudden, Hope Hicks shows up outside the glass thing, and she's giving me the signal. And so I step out, I go out, and I read this thing. She's got this transcript, and she's like about to cry. She goes, oh, this is terrible.
Breitbart's Steve Bannon had signed on as the CEO of Trump's campaign.
I said, what are you so upset about? What is this? I said, the Washington Post is going to publish a story in an hour. And I go, what's so bad about it? And she goes, well, look at it. She says I'm going to grab him by the and I go, oh, maybe I haven't focused on that. So look down, I go, oh, okay.
I better use some Tic Tacs just in case they start kissing.
Bannon, Hicks, a top aide, and other members of the Trump team watched it online.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the I can do anything.
Like, whoa, boom, that thing hits, and we're sitting in the conference room. And on video, I didn't quite realize it was audio and video. In video, it's pretty powerful, so everything shuts down.
Donald Trump caught on tape, in his own words, vulgar words, boasting about being able to grab women by their genitals and get away with it because he's a star.
So after the Access Hollywood tape, our poll numbers took a hit, and some national polls had us down to 35%, her at 48. That's with 1 month to go exactly.
In the audio, you can hear Trump talk about a married woman he tried to have sex with and how he behaves with women that he's attracted to.
The Trump campaign is in full damage control mode following a troubling story.
I thought that was probably it for Trump. It was stunning. I mean, it was stunning just to hear, you know, a major party nominee talk that way about any group. Never mind my own, right? Women. It was jarring. It was very jarring.
The Trump camp has swiftly launched into disaster mode.
A big development in this campaign as it comes.
This was the October surprise. Had the ability to take down a campaign, and the internal discussion amongst the campaign, some were you need to apologize immediately, and some were you need to double down.
A damage control team gathered. Rudy Giuliani, Chris Christie, Kellyanne Conway, Bannon.
You know, it's Rudy and Christie and all the traditional politicians are saying it's over and you gotta, you know, Trump's going around and saying, give me your percentage and what do I do? And they're all like, you know, 0%, 20%. I go, it's 100%. And he goes, I said, listen, they don't care. This is locker room talk. They don't care about vulgarity or anything like that. They care about they're losing their jobs. They're losing their country. They see their country going away from them.
The Republican establishment began to defect.
He's in a bad mood, okay? Now we've got a full revolt. Pence is nowhere to be found. He's not out there saying great. He gives them, you know, we get a letter from him. Paul Ryan's out of the campaign. McConnell's out because they thought they're going to lose the Republican Party. They thought every woman in America will never vote for a Republican again, right? Because this guy's a barbarian.
This is a political disaster, no doubt. Donald Trump's campaign, its worst crisis ever.
And you see so many Republicans denounce Trump, even though he is the Republican nominee and there's not going to be someone else to emerge. The Republicans are basically saying, whatever, give it to the Democrats.
The traditional rules of politics called for an abject apology.
I've never said I'm a perfect person, nor pretended to be someone that I'm not. I've said and done things I regret. And the words released today on this more than a decade-old video are one of them.
But then he would reframe the crisis on his own terms. Us versus them.
Bill Clinton has actually abused women, and Hillary has bullied, attacked, shamed, and intimidated his victims.
And soon the base let him know they had gotten the message.
There's literally this mob down there. And he goes, look, there's my people. Trump just walks out there.
They were on his side. They liked the conflict, the fight.
He will never apologize. He punches and then he punches harder and then he doubles down and he refigures and then he punches again. He is never someone that's gonna say, I made a mistake or I apologize. He will never back down.
And the very next day, just before the presidential debate, Bannon had a plan to keep the conflict going.
We didn't tell anybody. Trump didn't know about it. We're in the presidential suite at the hotel, walk up, and Trump, as often would do, would kind of lean back and almost close his eyes and say, okay, here's what we got. We got Paula Jones and all the women that Clinton assaulted. Then you're gonna sit in the middle, we're gonna open the door and they're gonna come in and we're gonna hit them, okay? And I'm sitting there, I'm making my pitch, right? He goes, I go, what do you think? He goes, I love it.
They spirited him down the freight elevator, put him in a conference room, and opened the doors to an unsuspecting press corps.
Next thing I know, and no one in the press knew this was happening, there was a press conference with all Bill Clinton's accusers right before the debate.
These four very courageous women have asked to be here, and it was our honor to help them.
There was widespread shock. Nobody had it beforehand.
Mr. Trump may have said some bad words, but Bill Clinton raped me, and Hillary Clinton threatened me. I don't think there's any comparison.
They were allegations the Clintons had long denied, but it didn't matter to Bannon and Trump. They were sowing more chaos.
What's the point to all of this? It doesn't make Donald Trump or what he was caught on tape saying any better, but it just creates a lot of confusion and chaos.
Even though it felt dirty and you felt kind of gross when you watched the whole thing unfold, it was effective. It reminded all of us that the woman who would go into office if he lost was no saint either. Not Hillary herself necessarily, but her husband. And with her enabling, really, it must be said.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Mr. Trump, you touched women without their consent. Mr. Trump, why did you say you touched women without consent, Mr. Trump?
Why don't y'all ask Bill Clinton that? Why don't y'all go ask Bill Clinton that? Go ahead and ask Hillary as well.
It was perfect, and it was that got us momentum. That gave us the velocity. That gave us the muzzle velocity to kind of drive home in the last, 4 or 5 weeks of the campaign.
It was a show. First of all, it took some of the attention away from Trump. What he's really good at in a fight is muddying the waters, muddying the truth, muddying the focus to the point where everybody just says, it's a wash. He's done this with the media for years. They say this about me, it's not, I say this, people don't trust the media, people don't trust Trump. He knows that in the end they kind of throw up their hands and say you deserve each other, and that's fine with him.
President thing doesn't work out, I would love to see a reality show where Donald Trump and Billy Bush just travel around the country in a bus.
Take a Tic Tac and grab him by the is the closest thing to a plan Donald Trump has described this entire election.
I don't think that's what Donald Trump's advisors meant when they told him to reach out to women.
Decision desk as Hall, Pennsylvania, for Donald Trump.
On election night, Trump's divisive campaign paid off.
This means that Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States. The most unreal.
The base, energized, narrowly put him over the top.
In an electoral college victory that virtually no one saw coming a year ago, a few months ago, even a month ago, even yesterday.
Whoa, everyone got this wrong. I mean, 1% of the pollsters and the prognosticators called this, and everyone else was wrong, and this is a huge story.
What Trump are we going to see?
Donald Trump has broken the rules.
There was a kind of prejudice against Trump, a kind of incredulity in the parlors of Washington and New York and Los Angeles. Somehow this guy who was so coarse and so blatantly exploiting race and division could actually win.
How unpredictable the new terrain here in Washington is.
It speaks how deeply divided our nation is. You have two candidates who received tens of millions of votes, a race that's separated by just a handful of votes in a handful of states. They care about Donald Trump. They like that guy. They want him to be the president, and they want to beat the Democrats. Crooked Hillary.
The creation of a new reality. It's going to be a political earthquake, an unraveling of the system, or even a revolution. President Trump is very much a wild card.
I don't think any of us thought he was going to win. When he wins, if people are being brutally honest, there was a large measure of disbelief.
Is this our new normal? Is there reason for
the sheer unpredictability of a President Donald Trump?
Even for him, it was a little of an overwhelming feeling to see yourself be elected President of the United States and realize that you're going to be the next commander-in-chief, the next leader of the free world. It's a humbling thing.
2016 changed the face of American politics forever.
After a polarizing campaign, he would need an acceptance speech to signal to the country, to an anxious Wall Street, and the world
A case of disruption coming to Washington.
what kind of president he would be.
I remember calling him on his cell phone when the futures were down. Bloomberg was reporting that stock futures were down 600 as a result of his victory. And I remember saying to him, hey, we got to put some stuff in there that are sensitizing to the markets to let people know things are going to be okay.
But Steve Bannon didn't want things to be okay. He went to work on a speech that would emphasize division, give the base what it wanted.
I started working on it like at, 1 o'clock in the morning. It was go to Washington and we're gonna burn out the permanent political class. We're gonna take a torch to the enemy, okay? That it was fire breathing.
But having won, Trump wavered. He would sound uncharacteristically conciliatory.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people.
You never see the Trump Victory Night speech ever replayed because it's just not Trump. It's kind of like, let's have a group hug.
For those who have chosen not to support me in the past, of which there were a few people, I'm reaching out to you for your guidance and your help so that we can work together and unify our great country.
I said, no. We didn't win an election to bring the country together. It's not time to bring the country together. It's time to take on the elites in this country, take the torch to them, hit them with a blowtorch.
I love this country. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I saw him not only then, but after he returned to Trump Tower that night, and the weight of the election, the processing of recognizing what was about to happen was clearly going through his mind at that time. You could see how profound the moment was.
I think there was a little bit of shock there, a moment of vulnerability. He said he was literally going to act more presidential than Abraham Lincoln. I mean, we laughed, but he meant it seriously. He was going to dial back on Twitter, dial up on presidential nature, if you will.
In his next public appearance, it was toned down Trump again. In the Oval Office. No sign of the brutal divisiveness that had gotten him there.
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an excellent conversation with President-elect Trump.
To see the two of them in the Oval Office was kind of the final moment of how in the world did this happen and what have we just gone through?
Been very encouraged by the, I think, interest in President-elect Trump's. I believe that it is important
Trump
for all of us.
is totally disinterested in the gravity of the job he's walking into. Just doesn't care,
Ben Rhodes was one of Obama's closest aides.
I think for Obama, it was like a gut punch. Obama's seeing this meeting as an opportunity. I need to tell him about all these things, how healthcare works in this country, the North Korean threat, what's going on with Iran. And Trump is totally disinterested in any of this. Didn't even care.
In front of the cameras, the reality TV star smiled and tried out his new role.
And we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. The meeting lasted for almost an hour and a half. And it could have, as far as I'm concerned, it could have gone on for a lot longer.
The Donald Trump who came to the Oval Office on November 10th, 2 days after Election Day, seemed like a very different Donald Trump. He spoke very respectfully of President Obama, who he had questioned whether was a legitimate president due to the birther issue, but here he was saying he greatly admired President Obama. So for someone who's just heard Trump talk in the campaign, it seemed like an out-of-body experience.
And I look forward to being with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. We are not.
And there was an idea for a brief moment that he was about to pivot. He was about to be, quote unquote, presidential. He would show us all that he was capable of uniting America and speaking to everybody at once.
But before long, the anger, resentment, conflict that had put Donald Trump in power would return. It erupted after one decisive meeting.
It's
between the president-elect and top intelligence President-elect Trump is about to get all of the details from U.S. intelligence officials are expected to be facing...
That day, the powerful leaders of the intelligence community arrived at Trump Tower. They came, evidence in hand, to convince the president-elect the Russians really had interfered in the election.
For what could be a day of fireworks here at Trump Tower.
He came to identify the question of the Russian intervention in the election as a questioning of his own election as president. And so he, from the very beginning, refused to treat this in the way that I think any other president would have, which is as a serious attack on the U.S. and its election integrity, but chose to view it in very personalized terms.
The officials say they'll present him with classified material.
And it only got more personal. After the briefing, FBI Director James Comey spoke to Trump privately.
Comey pulls the president aside and he tells him, hey, listen, I need you to know that there's this, what we now call the dossier.
The dossier. Unverified and sensational allegations prepared by a former British spy, partially paid for by the Democrats. It was political dynamite.
Russian regime has been cultivating, supporting, and assisting Trump for at least 5 years.
It's full of things that may be able to allow the Russians to blackmail him. It has information about him involved in perverted sexual acts.
To exploit Trump's personal obsessions and sexual perversion in order to obtain suitable compromising material on him.
After the meeting, the president-elect was furious.
Trump is talking to his top aides, and he views this as blackmail. It's a shakedown, he tells them. His assumption is that Comey is giving this to him to show him that he's got something on him.
Then news of the briefing leaked.
This is CNN breaking news.
CNN has learned that the nation's top intelligence officials provided information to President-elect Donald Trump.
There's the controversial move by BuzzFeed last night, publishing a dossier.
Before long, the entire dossier was online.
But they have been detailed by numerous media outlets, including BuzzFeed.
Trump's chief strategist, Steve Bannon, told the president-elect he knew what was going on. Bannon himself had used Breitbart to wage harsh right-wing attacks. Now, Bannon said, the mainstream media was going after Trump.
This is what scumbags the mainstream media are, and how gutless they are. BuzzFeed, the standard of excellence in journalism in our country, prints the dossier with the link. And I said, here it goes, because in the New York Times, Washington Post, they're like, it's up, bang, 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 bang. They're reporting this was given to the president, right?
He wasn't even president, and already Trump was under siege.
The president-elect must have concluded that the press was going to be an adversarial, confrontational force, this even before he took office, and that the press had sources that could undermine him, sources that knew what he was doing, even if he was privately meeting with the FBI director. I think that set the tone for what was to follow.
Now it was back to what Trump did best. At a press conference the very next day, he gave his base what they had come to expect. He attacked.
I think it was disgraceful that the intelligence agencies allowed any information that turned out to be so false and fake out.
He expresses frustration. He knows it's a setup. He knows it's a plot to destroy him and people around him.
And that's something that Nazi Germany would have done and did do. I think it's a disgrace.
Trump, I think because of the dossier and the leak of the dossier, was so furious that he just came out and lashed out at everybody. And I think that sort of set the tone for the entire administration, to be honest.
That information that was false and fake and never happened got released to the public.
I think that was a signal to everybody, certainly to me and the rest of the media, that this was the Trump we were going to get in the White House. That it wasn't going to be any sort of a reset. It was going to be the angry, the same Trump that was out there in the campaign trail.
Can you give us a question? Go ahead.
Trump made it clear the press was the enemy.
You are attacking our news organization. Can you give us a chance?
Your organization.
You are attacking our news organization.
Your organization,
Can you give us a
sir.
chance
Let's
to
go.
ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can
Quiet.
you state,
Quiet.
Mr. President-elect,
Go ahead.
can you
She's-
state
she's asking
categorically,
a question.
Mr.
Don't be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
be
You're
rude.
attacking us.
He then deployed a weapon designed to undermine the media, a catchphrase.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
Go ahead.
can you state
It was really extraordinary watching Donald Trump take fake news, the term fake news, and adopt it as his own critique of the media. He has created this alternative reality that allows him to dismiss or discredit anything that is negative while pushing his own narrative.
But I will tell you, some of the media outlets that I deal with are fake news, more so than anybody. I could name them, but I won't bother. But you have few sitting right in front of us. So they're very, very dishonest people.
He used it as a way, again, to divide the country, to energize his supporters, and to cast himself as somebody who is under siege by, an establishment or an elite whose interests are counter to the people who elected Donald Trump. And frankly, very effectively done.
It's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen.
He's a brilliant marketer, and he knew that with the drop in credibility of the media and the increase in skepticism and cynicism from the public, that he was able to get away with much more. He was able to say things that no other president had said, and to be able to challenge the press directly.
That this fake news was indeed fake.
Sir, you did not answer. Sir, you did not answer whether any of your associates were in contact with the Russians. Sir, you did not answer. You did not answer whether any of your associates were in contact with the Russians. Can you categorically deny that did not happen, sir? Can you categorically deny that did not happen, sir?
The world is watching our country today. Trump is set to become America's 45th president.
As he took the oath of office, Donald Trump made no pretense of seeking unity or healing. He spoke directly to his base.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
He framed the conflict, us versus them.
Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs.
He very much made accentuating the divide part of his campaign strategy, and even more incredibly, part of his governing strategy. I think he is the first president who arrived explicitly understanding and even seeking to speak only to his base.
But that very day, he would be confronted by the other side of the divide.
We're waiting for, and they got their moment. And I have to tell you, we are just passing Trump Hotel. We did pass protesters, so you could hear the din of the people.
We are next, right across the street from the hotel. There's a huge group of protesters combined with supporters, and they've been very vocal, and we've seen a few flare-ups.
Okay, it looks like they're going back to the car.
So, Lester, there is a change of plans now, I believe. He is back in his vehicle.
It was a sign of the anger also deepening on the left. The mood that day went from peaceful protests to standoffs. To violent provocation. By the next day, hundreds of thousands of peaceful protesters overwhelmed Washington.
The resistance will be televised live from Washington, D.C.
One of the largest single-day protests in American history, speaking out against Donald Trump just one day after he took office.
We want a leader, not a tweeter. We want
The day after the inauguration,
There were more people who showed up on the National Mall in Washington for the Women's March than there had been the day before when a new president was inaugurated.
When you had the Women's March and the hundreds of thousands of people out in the streets in Washington, in cities around the country, in places around the world. There was an energy created by his election. That energy began to course through the political system. And you could see that with the Women's March.
There will be a debate about the size of the crowd. These protesters saying that they're going to have a bigger crowd here today than Donald Trump had of his supporters for the inaugural yesterday. We'll let that debate play out.
The protests, the women, then the breaking point. The news about the size of the crowd at his inauguration.
Former President Obama on the left, and Trump's inauguration, where they're on the right with far fewer spectators.
Literally from the exact same vantage point, showing a big difference in the size of the crowd.
There were big holes in the crowd, so those are the comparisons right there.
Paling in comparison to President Obama's.
Take a look at that exact same image from today. We saw fewer people.
Visually, at least, it was smaller.
I think it's safe to say there was light turnout.
Donald Trump is a TV guy. He has always been concerned with his ratings and with numeric values of winning versus losing. So the notion of having a smaller crowd than somebody else just eats at him.
On their first day in the White House, press aide Cliff Sims saw Trump's frustration up close.
Within the first 5 minutes that I'm in the building, there's this kind of crisis moment. There was a lot of reporting that the inaugural crowds for him were not as big as the inaugural crowds for Obama. That is the equivalent for Donald Trump of a schoolyard fight. So they were really coming after him, hitting him where it hurts.
And he starts insisting that's not true. We have the biggest crowd ever. He tells Sean Spicer, his press secretary, you go out there and tell them that. And it sets the tone. It sets the tone from the beginning. This is not about healing. This is not about bringing people together.
Sean, first day on the job, is thinking to himself, here's my chance to kind of show I'm tough. I'm gonna punch back 10 times harder than they hit us. Let's figure out how to do that. I grab a computer, start, pecking out a statement.
This was the statement they drafted. Almost every fact about the crowd size was wrong.
We were so caught up in the moment, and Sean's trying to impress the president, and I'm being told facts that end up not being true, which we didn't vet properly. Sean was basically like marching out to his own death there.
Good evening. Thank you guys for coming. I know
at least his credibility's death.
Photographs of the inaugural proceedings were intentionally framed in a way, in one particular tweet, to minimize the enormous support that had gathered on the National Mall.
And only a fool would have gone out there kind of half-cocked the way that we did, and we were those fools.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Even the New York Times...
When he goes out and says, this is the biggest crowd size ever.
A misrepresentation of the crowd in their...
What he's saying, in essence, is what's true is what the leader says is true. The obliteration of the line between truth and the lie is fundamental to grasp because it's so elemental to a functioning democracy. And the degradation of those institutions is a weakening of our system.
Did you lie on his behalf?
No.
Never?
No. There were plenty of times when, look, your job, you may not go full on it, but I don't think that's your, I think the job of the press secretary is to articulate what the principal wants articulated, not what you want. You're not there to call balls and strikes and interpret. That's what you guys should be writing and covering, instead of sowing division about tweets and false narratives. I will see you on Monday.
How about the Obamacare changes? Bigger than Trump's inaugural?
What we learned in those first days of the Trump presidency was the degree to which Donald Trump was going to insist on trying to write the history of his presidency the way he wanted to. That if you spoke for Donald Trump, you had a constituency of one, and that was Donald Trump.
You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Wait a minute. Alternative facts? Alternative facts, 4 of the 5 facts he uttered. The one thing he got right was Zeke Miller. 4 of the 5 facts he uttered were just not true. Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
I mean, the obvious impact is that it's created a tremendously dangerous, unstable force in American life where people don't know what to believe. People have been told they're right not to believe the things they are told by credible sources. The President of the United States has contributed mightily to an environment where people believe what they want to believe, and that is going to have long-term repercussions.
Trump didn't let it go. The fight over crowd size resonated with his base and the us versus them war he was waging.
Before we leave, the president tells us he wants to show us just one more image.
One thing this shows is how far over they go here. Look how far this is. This goes all the way down here, all the way down. Nobody sees that. You don't see that in the pictures. But when you look at this tremendous sea of love, I call it a sea of love, it's really something special.
It really did become emblematic of what the Trump presidency was to be, in that nothing was accepted at face value. It was kind of a warning sign that not to take your eye off this ball, because it's going to be different from now on, and it has been.
Focused on the size of his crowds, the size of his ratings, the size of his hands, the size of, well, everything, and
Either that's a lot of empty space, or that crowd is even wider than I thought.
You just couldn't see Trump's crowd because they were wearing polar bear skin.
Trump's first acts as president were also meant to stoke conflict.
Next is an executive order minimizing the economic burden of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act pending repeal.
He signed a raft of executive orders on some of the most divisive issues in American life and politics.
Got more than 200 possible executive orders for the new president's consideration.
On Obamacare, the environment, immigration, and the border wall.
I do think that they wanted to have a flurry of activity at the beginning to demonstrate that Trump is what he said he was. He's not going to wait. He's not going to take his time. He knows what to do, and he's going to fix everything. He's going to set the world right immediately.
And the message is, it's a crisis. We're at work, and we're driving this. Donald Trump's president of the United States. Now comes the hour of action. There's been enough talk.
Steve Bannon kept a list on his office wall of the promises that the president was trying to deliver on.
People talk all the time about everything that Trump does politically is a base play. Since Steve Bannon being the example of the one who encourages him to, let's play to the base, let's play to the base, let's play to the base. They feel vindicated that 2016 showed that if you energize a sliver of the country, that can be more powerful than kind of having this more even keel message that we're going to appeal to a little bit of everyone. Steve Bannon, I think, rejects that premise. And he says that I'm all about energizing this sliver and that's the way to win.
The most explosive executive order, crafted to create shock and awe, was aimed at blocking people from 7 predominantly Muslim countries from entering the United States.
Everybody understood what the travel ban was designed, in fact, to do. They understood the symbolism, they understood the message that it sent to his base, and what they were saying was, promise made, promise kept.
Protection of the nation from foreign terrorist entry into the United States. That's big stuff.
The reaction from the other side was immediate. More outrage.
A scene of outrage at JFK Airport in New York, where
protests all across the country, the reaction from around the world.
As a symbolic issue to his base and to his opponents, as a marker in American life and in the American political debate when we moved into an entirely different, dark kind of period. And I think its significance is hard to overstate.
Swift reaction from around the country
Now protests, outrage, and backlash.
These actions that Trump does to appease his base and to excite his base have incited the resistance against him. The travel ban is just one of the most important days of the Trump presidency. Not just because of the policy itself and what it says about us as Americans, much less the people themselves, who are now imperiled, unclear if they could come to the United States. But it was the thousands of people rushing the airports.
In Seattle, police actually dispersed some crowds with pepper spray. It was a day
It was the day when it felt like democracy may be crumbling at its seams. And what might still be here when we wake up in the morning? There's still gonna be 7,000 people at LaGuardia, and at DCA, and at Dulles? Are they gonna start storming the gates and seizing refugees from TSA agents?
It struck me that this administration was going to be a lot different than any other we had seen. That they were simply not going to abide by any type of process, that there was a certain amount of spontaneity and impulsiveness about the way this administration was going to operate.
The president will meet with more Republicans in Congress.
President Trump will meet with conservative leaders to talk about
He had incited conflict with the travel ban, and now he would move on to another polarizing issue, Obamacare.
The Republican Party had, for 3 elections in a row, run on the repeal of Obamacare. So I think there was a sense that, hey, we owe our electorate, they put us here for this reason.
To get it done, Trump would rely on Speaker Paul Ryan and the Republican establishment.
In the sequencing, repeal and replace, and that's where the establishment, and Ryan says, I got this. We voted 50 times to repeal this. This is something we own. We know this better than anybody.
President Trump met earlier this evening with members of the Freedom Caucus to discuss.
But like the travel ban, Trump's effort was immediately mired in angry opposition.
There's still half of America, which is a significant percentage, that did not vote for Trump, did not vote for Republicans in Congress, and did want to repair Obamacare, but didn't want to dump it. And when you start with the most contentious issue, what are you going to get?
All around the country, you had these hugely energized town halls, and legislators would go home and get screamed at by constituents who were terrified that you were going to take away their health care.
And I had the resist movement, the protesters around the building.
The problem is Obamacare has just collapsed.
There's just a huge reaction. I had town halls with people in churches swearing and lobbing F-bombs at the pastor, if that helps set the tone. I'd try to finish sentences on healthcare, et cetera, whatever. Folks would just, ah. That's what we were facing, right? People were saying, you're gonna take away healthcare from millions. I'm like, ah, boo, you know what I mean? So it's hard to have rational dialogue, still is.
They were kicking a hornet's nest of millions of Americans who are now terrified that they could lose their health insurance coverage.
And take the billionaires' money and give it to that woman.
It just created an environment that I also don't think Republicans were really politically ready for.
Single payer, run by the government? Oh yeah, it's got problems, but it's also got elections, and you're gonna find that out in 2018.
What Trump has done is he's made Obamacare popular.
The reality is that Obamacare is
Trump's frustration grew as the legislation became bogged down.
legislation that is twice as popular as the president.
The vagaries of the legislative process are lost on him. On The Apprentice, you just simply say you're fired and that's the end of it. The idea of working with the legislature is it's a mystery to him. And so how is it these Republicans can't get this done? What is it you're doing, Paul Ryan? You told me you were going to get this done.
Repeal and replace becomes a fiasco. They're totally and completely incompetent. They're not ready to govern. They're just not ready to govern.
The Senate is scheduled to vote on the latest version of the bill to replace Obamacare.
Trump watched as the Senate prepared for a crucial vote on health care reform.
On health care, a vote that's too close to call at this point.
The key vote, Republican Senator John McCain. a longtime Trump adversary.
Today to cast what is expected to be a yes vote on health care.
Court, call roll.
It was the most dramatic night on the Senate floor I had seen in all my years up there.
Mr. Barrasso.
The vote's ticking away, the vote's ticking away, and McCain's on the floor,
Mr. Blumenthal.
but he's not voting.
Mr. Blunt. Mr. Booker. Mr.
You saw Mitch McConnell looking more and more unhappy, his arms were closed.
Ms. Duckworth.
And you could tell from the body language on the Republican side that they were very worried.
Mr. Durbin.
John McCain walks up to where the vote clerks are, and he lifts his hand very dramatically.
McCain, with a thumbs down gesture, shocked the chamber.
You could hear audible gasps in the chamber, and those gasps of surprise came from both sides of the aisle.
In the Senate chambers, you could hear the shock. First gasp.
Another devastating blow to Republican senators as an Obamacare repeal fails.
Nobody was expecting John McCain to vote no, and the way that he did obviously had ramifications, not just in the Senate or in Congress, but in the White House as well. And how it would make everything more difficult because members are fighting with each other now.
Breaking news right now, the Republicans' Obamacare repeal failed in the Senate tonight. The vote 49-51.
The dramatic collapse of the health care effort.
The president had been watching on television.
We were in the dining room off the Oval Office. There was profound disappointment that we were that close and that had spent a lot of effort really believing that we could finally do something when it comes to health care.
Republicans tried and have failed again.
So it was just huge disappointment.
We are continuing to follow breaking news on Capitol Hill, where lawmakers dealt a serious blow to the president's...
His first major legislative effort went down in defeat.
Trump was angry. He was angry because he was failing as a president. All he had to do was click on cable news to see that he wasn't being portrayed as the winning, swashbuckling, powerful president he wanted to be.
It was a decisive moment. He would have to unleash his attack politics onto the Republican establishment itself.
He goes with the corrupt, feckless Republican establishment instincts for the first couple months of his presidency, and it backfires. What other conclusion could he draw other than now it's time to try some stuff on my own?
This time, he turned to the base, spoke to them directly.
You can thank Congress, the same people that can't even give us H-care.
He targeted congressional Republicans, especially leader Mitch McConnell.
Senator Mitch McConnell said, "I had excessive expectations, but I don't think so. After 7 years of hearing repeal and replace, why not done?"
The president's frustration was not subtle, right? Particularly towards Mitch McConnell. I think he just saw him as a failure.
Can you believe that Mitch McConnell, who has screamed repeal and replace for 7 years, couldn't get it done?
Trump is using the most powerful weapon he has, which is Twitter, to humiliate him repeatedly, to rake him over the coals, to let his followers know this is Mitch McConnell's fault. He's failed you, not me.
Mitch, get back to work and put repeal and replace, tax reform and cuts, and a great infrastructure bill on my desk for signing.
He's feeding it. Trump is feeding hostility towards Congress, and that tweet storm galvanized Trump voters to turn against Congress in a way that I've never seen a governing party's supporters engage in.
He had exploited division, separated the country into us versus them. And now he would target a new enemy, the government itself, tapping into conspiratorial fears he called the deep state.
There's a permanent class of federal employees that don't necessarily agree or voted for this president, and that aren't thrilled to see him in power. They're working internally against the president.
Trump's war with the deep state began with FBI Director James Comey, the man who had delivered the dossier and was investigating Russian election interference. Unable to get him to back down, Trump fired him.
Breaking news
James Comey has been removed from heading the FBI. This is a statement.
TV news helicopters were waiting as Comey left the FBI field office in Los Angeles.
This is a very closely kept secret here at the White House. I am told only a handful of top
Trump has finally fired FBI Director Comey.
When the president fired Jim Comey, there was an explosion, a huge eruption in the media and the country. You started hearing Donald Trump compared to Richard Nixon. This was another Saturday Night Massacre. This was another Watergate.
The firing of Comey, though, has drawn comparisons to President Richard Nixon's Saturday Night
This
Massacre.
is a moment where you really understand the feedback loop that Trump kind of thrives on. I make a decision, and then I'm able to immediately go and watch the reaction.
Stunning news, even for President Trump, who has been known to shock people.
This is a president using his power to prevent himself falling under the justice system that we all have to deal with.
The bombshell announcement, something that was completely unexpected to anyone.
What are the talking heads saying about this? How is it being framed? How is it being covered by the media?
Trump would escalate the conflict,
In a campaign-style rally, a defiant President Trump.
rallying his base against the media,
back in his happy
the Justice Department, and the FBI.
I did you a great favor when I fired this guy. I tell you, I did you a great favor. Look at what's happened. Look at how these politicians have fallen for this junk. Russian collusion. Give me a break.
It's basically a kind of divide and conquer kind of strategy. And so as long as the country is sort of divided and he has his defenders, he can undermine those who are attacking him.
People, take a look at the intelligence agencies. Honestly, folks, let me tell you, it's a disgrace. We got to get back down to business. It's a disgrace.
I was surprised and unsettled that we have a new president who is attacking institutions of his own government, his own intelligence community, his own law enforcement community. These are people who work for him and are sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States. So this was an unprecedented, historic situation.
To his supporters, he cast himself as a victim.
This is the single greatest witch hunt of a politician in American history. There is no collusion and no obstruction. I should be given an apology. You are witnessing the single greatest witch hunt in American political history, led by some very bad and conflicted people.
His tweets provided the script for Fox News.
Fox and Friends starts right now.
The president is really mad.
He tweeted this out as the phony Russian witch hunt continues.
This is a very dangerous witch hunt.
It's only because I think this is a witch hunt.
And put an end to the political witch hunt against President Trump.
If you turn on Fox News, if you click on Breitbart, he is this hero victimized by forces who are unfairly attacking him.
This is CNN.
If you turn on CNN, if you open up the New York Times,
Really looks a lot like obstruction of justice.
Trump is a failing president who's very unpopular.
This president has no one to blame but himself.
And increasingly, those two worlds pulled apart. The partisan divide became even deeper than it was in the election. It became a chasm. And in many ways, it's an unbridgeable chasm.
He thinks he's still on The Celebrity Apprentice. It was between James Comey and Meatloaf, and, well, the loaf won again.
President Vladimir Putin said today that Russia had nothing to do with the firing of FBI Director James Comey.
James Comey thought it was a prank and started laughing. But to be fair, that's also how Trump reacted when he won the election. He was like, okay.
Then, the starkest example of just how ugly it was all becoming.
Charlottesville. In many ways, it was the worst moment of the first year of his presidency because it was so obvious
what a president should do in a situation like that?
We have breaking news tonight with that alt-right white nationalist rally. Take a look at this.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
Universities, the torch-wielding white nationalists coming face-to-face.
During a demonstration by white nationalists at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville.
White lives matter! White lives matter! White lives matter! White lives matter!
What you had in Charlottesville was these alt-right people, many of them marching in Trump's name. We could see them marching with torches, and it looked like something out of Nazi Germany.
Neo-Nazis and white nationalist protesters were forming, protesting plans to remove a statue of Robert E. Lee. Former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke praised President Trump.
We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump.
Also arriving, counter-protesters, determined to confront the white nationalists.
This is what they represent.
Charlottesville was a clash between these forces. The forces of these far-right groups and then counter-protesters. Folks who say, why are there Nazis in our streets? We're going to go get them out.
Armed right-wing militia arrived. Hour by hour, the tensions grew.
Violent clashes between white supremacists and counter-protesters broke out earlier today.
We see time and time again videos, the far-right protesters beating black attendees of the counter-protest.
Charlottesville under siege
as police in riot gear try to restore calm.
And then, the unthinkable.
A man drives his vehicle into the crowd, killing Heather Heyer and wounding others. This was an incident that was clearly the tale of these far-right white supremacist powers, emboldened and out of control.
Panic and horror in Charlottesville. A car slams into a crowd of counter-protesters at a white supremacy
woman was
protest.
killed when a man drove his car into a crowd, injuring 19 others.
Trump watched the violence. His response at this explosive moment would be crucial to both sides of the divide.
When this happens, the instinct of most presidents would be heal, unify, mourn. But that's not what he wants to do. It's not his impulse, but he has to say something.
But we're closely following the terrible events unfolding in Charlottesville, Virginia.
He had prepared remarks that he was going to read, condemning the violence in Charlottesville.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
The words of many sides were ad-libbed and added by Trump. They were not in his prepared remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The ad-lib immediately provoked an uproar.
To shore up the president's equivocal response to Charlotte.
That didn't go over very well because it was clear that one side seemed to, initiate this altercation. It was the nationalists, these white nationalists. They were largely responsible for the violence.
Arriving in New York City, the president faced a firestorm.
When the president won't stand with you against Klansmen who showed up with guns,
Didn't respond explicitly condemning right-wing.
That's how neo-Nazis see President Trump. They are clapping for him. I think he's making very clear who and what he is.
Talks like a white supremacist. It's likely a white
Some advisors wanted Trump to apologize, but not Steve Bannon.
Not a tough call for most politicians, and so if you can't...
This is where various elements in the White House and the West Wing get in his ear about trying to get him to do something that is not in his wheelhouse, not in the way he rolls. You can't do that. Let Trump be Trump. The nation voted for it. It is what it is. It's just not, if you try to do it, it'll be phony and everybody can spell the phoniness.
Trump kept it going.
Excuse me. What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt?
He's so fiery, and he's so angry, and he's really getting in personal back and forth with members of the press.
So, as far as I'm concerned, that was a horrible, horrible day. Wait a minute, I'm not finished. I'm not finished, fake news.
We saw Trump completely unbound from convention, tradition, even democratic norms, I would say, and just fully speaking his mind in an unfiltered and I think to a lot of people unnerving way.
I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say. Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as you, and you had some very bad people in that group. You also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people.
I'm a reporter who has reported on race for a long time, and I never would have imagined the person in the office of the president calling people who go to a Nazi rally very fine people.
But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? Thank you all very much. Thank you.
What about the Nazis who support you?
It's probably the first time where the country realizes this is gonna get bad. And it is the beginning of a time in America where people realize that America is not just a place where racist ideals can exist, but it's a place where racist ideals can be fueled by the White House.
A tremendously positive impact.
He is about division. His presidency is predicated on that. He wants division. He craves it. He enjoys finding seams and driving right into them. There's no fight he doesn't want to be part of, and there are plenty of fights he'd like to start. The fight is the goal. There's no reward from his point of view in unity. There's a reward in fighting.
President Trump is being criticized by fellow Republicans for being too...
Some Republicans broke ranks and came out against him.
White supremacy, bigotry, and racism have absolutely no place in our society, and no one, especially POTUS, should ever tolerate it.
Mr. President, you can't allow #white supremacists to share only part of blame.
There's no moral equivalency between racists and Americans standing up to defy hate and bigotry.
I reacted in a way that most of my colleagues did as well, that this was not where a president should be. This was a layup. This was easy. If there's white supremacy in any form, you condemn it. I mean, that's the easy thing to do, and he didn't. And thought, oh man, that's really drilling down on the base.
With that statement, it sent a signal to some of the most intolerant elements in our country, American citizens who are racist, that he was listening to them, that he respected that point of view, that he wasn't going to walk away from them. And that's been a lasting message that's been out there.
President Trump is holding a Make America Great Again rally.
President Trump had been compiling an enemies list.
For a campaign-style event tonight.
The media, the FBI, and now Republicans who weren't sufficiently loyal.
If you're an elected Republican, Donald Trump has made it clear that if you go against him, he's going to go against you, and you will pay a price for that. And we saw it in any number of individual cases, and it doesn't take very many of those. I mean, all it takes is 2 or 3 of those cases for people to get the message that there is enormous risk if you go against the president.
One example, Arizona Republican Senator Jeff Flake, who had emerged as a Trump critic.
Well, I'm thrilled to be back in Phoenix, in the great state of Arizona.
As always, Trump would attack, rallying his base against Flake.
They all said, please, Mr. President, don't mention any names. So I won't.
It's about going back to the base to demonstrate how popular it is to be with the president, particularly in Jeff's own state.
And nobody wants me to talk about your senator, who's weak on borders, weak on crime, so I won't talk about him. No, I will not mention any names. Very presidential, isn't it? Very presidential.
When the president of the United States rolls in, and you have a rally that has thousands of people in it, Jeff pays attention.
For Donald Trump, everything's about Donald Trump. You're either for Donald Trump or you are against Donald Trump. And he wants to encourage everybody to see it his way. So he steps into all of these and makes his voice heard and makes his muscle felt.
It was effective. Flake's own voters turned on him.
I think he knew at that time that I was out of step with a lot of the Republican base, that he represented more of their feelings than I did.
We will make America great again. Thank you, Arizona. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Flake understood what it meant. His Senate career was over.
Senator from Arizona.
I decided to pull the pin. None of my colleagues knew it at that point. I told a few of them, you may want to come to the floor.
But anger and resentment are not a governing philosophy. The impulse to scapegoat and belittle threatens to turn us into a fearful, backward-looking people. In the case of the Republican Party, those things also threaten to turn us into a fearful, backward-looking minority party.
I think there was relief among a lot of members of the Republican Party that finally somebody was coming out in the open and saying this, because on some level, this is what most of them felt. And they'd been afraid to say it. They'd been afraid because they were afraid of Donald Trump. They'd been afraid because they were afraid that his base would defeat them in the party primary the next time they were up for the election.
As Flake walked off the floor, he left the other Republicans with a choice.
He's basically drawing a line. If we are going to be a successful conservative party, we have got to turn away from what Donald Trump is doing to us and the way he is leading us. It's kind of a moment of truth for the Republican Party. What kind of a party is this going to be? Who's going to lead this party?
But Flake soon discovered there would be no Republican insurrection.
There isn't a rush to stick up for Jeff Flake or side with him. Everyone just kind of stays on the sidelines and wants to stay out of it. A lot of, when you would talk to Senator, what did you think about Jeff Flake? Oh, I didn't see what he said. You know, I missed it. I was in a meeting. Like, there wasn't much ruminating on his decision.
We have a guts and courage crisis in American politics. We have politicians who go to great effort to get elected, to go to Washington, not to fight for great principles or causes, but to see who can be the best bootlicker.
The president had won.
Jeff Flake thought he was going to raise his profile to the point where he would have an opportunity to be something bigger than what he is. And what happened? He made a terrible calculation. He went against Donald Trump, who's a proven winner, and now Jeff is a guy who also used to be a U.S. Senator.
Two more GOP congressmen announcing that they will not seek re-election in the 2018.
President Trump from two Republican senators calling it.
In time, more than 40 other Republicans would leave.
Of more than a dozen Republicans who've decided.
In the Trump era, there's no room for disagreement. The era where the senators, the members of Congress asserted their prerogatives, their power would stand up to a president, seems largely to be over in the United States today.
It looks like President Trump is going to get his Christmas wish.
The most sweeping rewrite of our tax code.
The first legislative win for President
Trump's dominance would culminate in front of the cameras in the Rose Garden.
Most sweeping tax overhaul in 3 decades.
It was a ceremony for the passage of his first major piece of legislation, a tax cut.
It's really, I guess it's very simple. When you think you haven't heard this expression, but we are making America great again. You haven't heard that, have you?
One by one, congressional leaders, some he'd previously ridiculed.
Mitch, how about you start it?
came forward to praise President Trump.
Well, let me just say, Mr. President, you made the case for the tax bill, but this has been a year of extraordinary accomplishment for the Trump administration. We've cemented the Supreme Court right of center for a generation. You've ended the overregulation of the American economy. Thank you, Mr. President, for all you're doing.
What the Republican establishment now know is Donald Trump is unequivocally the leader of the Republican Party. He is the one who sets the tone of what takes place in Washington. He is the leader of our country, both politically and from a legislative side of things.
Something this big could not have been done without exquisite presidential leadership. Mr. President, thank you for getting us over the finish line. Thank you for getting us where we are. Really.
Donald Trump has conflated Republican Party loyalty with loyalty to himself to an extreme degree and has been remarkably successful over the last several years in what amounts to really a hostile takeover of Republican Party that was actually quite united against him in 2016.
Orrin, say a few words, please.
Well, Mr. President, I have to say that you're living up to everything I thought you would. You're one heck of a leader, and we're all benefiting from it, and we're going to make this the greatest presidency that we've seen, not only in generations, but maybe ever. God bless all of you.
Paul Ryan just said, how good was that?
In essence, this became Trump's Republican Party. The testimony that people gave there is hard to take back. Orrin Hatch, for example. But McConnell and Ryan and others who gave Trump an enormous amount of credit. That created a unity within the Republican Party that had not existed.
This was a fight for the soul of the Republican Party, and Trump won. There's no question about it. And it's not so much that Trump took over the Republican Party, it's that the Republican Party completely capitulated to him. They're all united in believing that in order to survive politically and not lose in a primary, they have to stick as close to him as possible. Even when he puts out racist tweets, you cannot criticize him in public. Even when he engages in the most reckless behavior, you cannot break with him in public.
Trump had brought divisive politics to the presidency, the Congress, and it would even extend to the Supreme Court.
It is my honor and privilege to announce that I will nominate Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the United States Supreme Court.
Supreme Court showdown as Democrats are promising to fight President Trump.
The battle is on. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh made the rounds on Capitol.
Now is the time to fight.
Now, some Democrats have already come out in total opposition to...
You don't belong in this building as a justice.
Pay attention to this, guys. Pay attention.
He's confirmed he'll be on the court for 25 to 30 years. That's 6 presidential terms. That is a key vote.
Trump sees courts as just another political body. You know, he refers to judges, he refers to an Obama judge or a Bush judge or a Trump judge. You might as well put a D or an R after their names. He doesn't see judges as being independent figures. He sees them as just an extension of the political battles.
The nomination was immediately polarizing, igniting partisan warfare in the Judiciary Committee.
Good morning. I welcome everyone to this confirmation hearing on the nomination of
Mr. Chairman.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Mr. Chairman.
To serve as Associate Justice.
Mr. Chairman.
Cable news coverage packaged and projected to each side of the divide.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
We cannot possibly move forward, Mr. Chairman.
I extend a very warm welcome
we have not been
Judge
given
Kavanaugh.
an opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, I appeal to the chair to recognize myself or one of my colleagues.
You're out of order.
Mr. Chairman, I appeal to be recognized on your sense of decency and integrity.
Proud
Mr. Chairman,
Judge,
if we cannot be recognized, I move to adjourn.
The American people.
Chairman, I move to adjourn.
shocking allegation that would feed the conflict.
Christine Blasey Ford, a research psychologist.
The woman's name is Christine Blasey Ford.
They told him his nominee was in trouble.
The worst case scenario for Kavanaugh and his defenders.
The allegations consumed the nation.
Christine Blasey Ford described Kavanaugh as stumbling drunk at a Maryland house party in the
Both say they're willing to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee, but that committee is set to
The Trump strategy: make it TV drama. Play to the base.
Tonight, Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh breaks his silence for the first time.
The network, Fox.
I did not have sexual intercourse or anything close to sexual intercourse in high school or for many years thereafter. And the girls from the schools I went to and
The performance, however, was not vintage Trump.
Trump's idea is if somebody ever hits you, hit them back twice as hard. And instead he's got Brett Kavanaugh talking about how long he stayed a virgin after he was in college, and it was embarrassing and not especially effective.
Through all these years that are in question, you were a virgin.
That's correct.
And through what years in college, since we're probing into your personal life here?
Many years after. I'll leave it at that. Many years after.
When you look at how where all this generated from.
Kavanaugh decided to hold back.
Where's this all coming from?
I just want a fair process where I can be heard.
You don't have any thoughts on where this is coming from?
I just want an opportunity, a fair process where I can defend my integrity.
You were a virgin.
That's correct.
Trump wanted him to get out there and fight back. He wanted him to be outraged. He wanted him to show anger and resolve. And this was communicated to Judge Kavanaugh.
To say that everything that could have gone wrong for Brett Kavanaugh has is...
The impetus is on Judge Kavanaugh. They did not have the votes in the Senate.
By the time Kavanaugh testified, he had received Trump's message: launch an us versus them attack.
There was only one person that mattered. It wasn't the committee, it wasn't the American people. It was the President of the United States watching to see whether that nomination would be pulled. President Trump even noted he was going to be watching the testimony.
Your coordinated and well-funded effort to destroy my good name will not drive me out. You may defeat me in the final vote, but you'll never get me to quit. Never.
He gives a performance in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee that is basically a Donald Trump impression.
This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. But you have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy.
Right out of Trump's playbook, Kavanaugh made it political.
This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit.
Dredging up a name sure to inflame: the Clintons.
Revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups.
It has become this completely politicized drama. He turned it into a huge fight between Democrats and Republicans. He's trying to rally all the Republicans to his side.
This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. The consequences will be with us for decades.
The president appreciates people who stand up for themselves and for what they believe and don't allow the politically correct police, or in this case, accusers, stop them or thwart them or impede them. And the president would tell you he knows a thing or two about that.
His testimony was powerful, honest, and riveting. Democrats' search and destroy strategy is disgraceful.
We've taken the idea of judicial independence, judicial neutrality, and we've discredited that in the eyes of the American people. What are the American people supposed to think if they watched 4 days of reality theater where people giving speeches and pounding the table and throwing down pieces of paper and saying things like that? It's very damaging to an institution that I have great respect for. for. And I hate to see this happen.
I have to say that I fear for the future.
#MeToo.
It's never okay to try to rape somebody, not even in high school. Not even if you're totally going to be a Supreme Court justice.
Any experts think he has a shot, to which Kavanaugh replied, a shot? Yeah, I'll take a shot.
It feels like they're doing this just to deliver a you to Democrats, and even more directly, a you to women. Because when this...
Soon, across the divide, a gathering storm. Democrats roaring back, taking over the House of Representatives, intensifying the partisanship in Washington.
Quite a dramatic night. Voters have decided on a significant...
On the House of Representatives, they have 220...
Even after Democrats flip the House...
House Democrats are already preparing for battle.
Lawmakers set to use their powerful...
You have a Democratic Party that is as dominant as it's ever been in Metro America. A Republican Party that is as dominant as it has ever been in non-Metro America. And what this produces is two Americas that are separate not only in their partisan affiliation, but in pretty much everything. Trump didn't create this. We've been heading in this direction for years. But he leaned into it, and everything he has done has deepened this trench.
Now, a new level of confrontation. Up close and in full view of the television cameras.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a great honor to have Nancy Pelosi with us and Chuck Schumer with us, and
Trump loves an enemy. So the advantage of the House flipping is now he has one. He has somebody to blame other than Republicans, if things don't get done. Wall not being built, that's because of the Democrats. Immigrants coming over the border, that's because of the Democrats.
60 people of the Republican Party have are losing their offices.
He's now got this foil that he likes to use in public.
And we've gained in the Senate. Nancy, we've gained in the Senate. Excuse me, did we win the Senate? We won the Senate.
When the president brags that he won North Dakota and Indiana, he's in real trouble.
I did.
Let me say this.
We did win North Dakota.
This is the most unfortunate thing. We came in here in good faith, and we're entering into this kind of a discussion in the public view.
But it's not bad, Nancy.
No,
it's called transparency.
I know.
He's carrying on, and Pelosi keeps trying to sort of get it to stop. Like, do we need to do this in front of the cameras?
Call a halt to this. We've come in here in good faith.
I thought that moment demonstrated for me what he understood about his presidency and the modern presidency that a lot of Democrats and that a lot of Republicans do not. I mean, this is where Trump understands entertainment. He understands television.
Nancy's in a situation where it's not easy for her to talk right now, and I understand
that. The best moments for him of his presidency are when he is breaking through the artifice of Washington.
But we have to have border security.
Mr. President, please don't characterize the strength that I bring to this meeting as the leader of the House Democrats who just won a big victory.
To Pelosi or to Schumer, yelling at each other in front of cameras and the American public is seeing you behave like children, that's just, it's humiliating and it's beneath the dignity of the office and their offices. But to him, that's winning, because that is showing people I'm not standing for the stagecraft here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
In the months that followed, the political conflict would escalate.
Pressured Ukraine's government to assist Trump's re-election campaign.
The president pressured Ukraine's leader about 8 times.
Today, I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry.
Democrats activated and angry.
The president must be held accountable. No one is above the law.
We're zeroing in on a framework for their impeachment case.
Moments playing out in American history.
What we know is that our nation has two mobilized movements, that there remains a fundamental fault line in our populace and in our population. We're not going back to politics as usual.
Then impeachment is the only option.
Trump amplifying us versus them.
The absolutely crazed lunatics, the Democrats, radical left, and their media partners standing right back there. are pushing the deranged impeachment witch hunt for doing nothing wrong.
President Trump is firing back and drawing widespread criticism for likening himself to the victim of a lynching.
Today, there's just a lack of respect and a willingness to ascribe the worst motives, to assume the other side is not just the opponent, political opponent, but the enemy, the guy who needs to be not just vanquished, but eliminated.
Our radical Democrat opponents are driven by hatred, prejudice, and rage. They want to destroy our country as we know it. Not acceptable. It's not going to happen.
The damage of this is going to be long-term, and I think it's going to be very, very deep. What have we been willing to accept that we weren't willing to accept before? How do we think about each other? How do we think about being an American? How do we treat one another? What are our standards? And I think the damage is potentially going to be very deep.
President Trump sending a scathing letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, demanding she, quote, immediately cease this impeachment
An
fantasy.
historic vote.
The president calling
Impeachment.
Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
We just saw what is a very bitterly divided America on display. Virtually every Democrat voting for impeachment.
A standoff.
Every Republican voting against it.
Feeding the anger, the outrage, the division.
We were far more divided in the Civil War, far more divided during the Great Depression. But we've always had hope in the future. And that hope, we're losing it with this division.
And all of the debates and all of the hearings hasn't seemed to budge anybody very
President
much.
Donald Trump is impeached. The vote in the House of
And
Representatives
soon, the election. This country goes into 2020 as divided as it's ever been. It will go through 2020 with one of the most divisive campaigns we've probably ever seen. And it is likely to come out at the end of 2020 still divided. And whether the next president, whether it's Donald Trump for a second term or whoever is the Democratic nominee, whether they can move us past that, I think is, the biggest single question for the next presidency. And I think based on everything we've seen, not just over the last few years, but over the last decade or more, tells us how enormously difficult that's going to be.
Go to pbs.org/frontline for the latest Frontline Transparency Project. See key quotes from the film in context.
He was able to say things that no other president had said.
Nothing was accepted at face value.
We have a new president who is attacking institutions of his own government.
It's time to take on the elites in this country.
Connect to the Frontline community on Facebook and Twitter, and watch anytime on the PBS video app or pbs.org/frontline. For more on this and other Frontline programs, visit our website at pbs.org/frontline. Frontline's America's Great Divide is available on Amazon Prime Video.